I'm Lawrence Temple, and today is the day that we observe Martin Luther King's birthday. But as a history teacher, I know everyone doesn't always know historical things or historical figures that you think everybody knows. Sometimes they don't. So I want to say a little things about MLK, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So who was he? He was a minister and a PhD, a black man born in the South in Georgia. The reason why he is such a giant in history is he became the leading voice to fight segregation and the laws that separated black people, and not only separated them from whites, but laws that put them in an inferior position. There were what we now call Jim Crow laws, specifically in the South, that said there were places black people couldn't go. There were stores and parts of town that were segregated, whites only. Schools, they had white and black public schools, and black schools were always given less funding, worse facilities, etc. Throughout the nation, if a store, a business, a city was racist, that did not allow blacks, did not allow their business, etc., the laws did not give a black person a chance to fight that. So, in other words, racism was legal. And even the laws that said that they were colorblind were not enforced. When violence was used by white mobs against black people who were trying to uh, protest or speak up for their rights, when violence was used against them, the whites who attacked them or murdered them were almost never even put on trial. And when they were, particularly in the South, there would be all white juries due to the laws at the time. Blacks couldn't even be on the juries, and they would almost always be let go. The first time Martin Luther King became known to the country, black people in Montgomery, Alabama, were protesting the fact that the city law said that on the public buses, the white and black section, and if more whites got on, blacks had to get up from where they were and make room and give up their seats to whites. It was one of 1,000 insults black people had to put up with. Rosa Parks, famous person that we know, refused to give up her seat. She wasn't the first black person to do this, but she was the first well-known one, I guess. And the people of Montgomery, after that, started a protest, a boycott, meaning they would not ride, black people would not ride the city buses until that rule got changed. And the leader of that movement was a young, new preacher named Martin Luther King. After about a year, that protest was successful, and he started becoming the most well known voice to protest against these racist laws. He would protest for equal treatment, for specifically for the right to vote, and for ending of all of these legal racist policies. He was met with violence. His home was bombed multiple times. He was shot at. He was jailed by corrupt police multiple times. Even other black leaders, some, felt that he was pushing too fast, too hard. Some of them were against him. He has a famous writing called Letter from a Birmingham Jail, where white ministers were saying that he should stop his protests. And so in this famous letter, he talked about what it was like to go through all these daily injustices that black people went through, and then was saying this is why it's impossible for us to wait. He was one of the first black people. Remember, it was a very segregated time. You rarely ever saw a black person on TV. And if they were, they were some kind of maid or butler or some kind of buffoon role. And it was purposeful that the institutions at the time wanted black people either invisible or seen at a lower level. So he was this educated, well spoken black man that you never got to see, speaking against issues that most whites either just took as natural, that they liked, or in some cases, and didn't even know. In the South, there were these laws, these Jim Crow laws. In the North, there weren't laws, but there were custom, where that was called de facto segregation. De jure, which means of the law segregation, that was in the South, where the law says blacks can go here, blacks can go there. In the North, it was called de facto. In other words, of fact, meaning there were, in most cases, there weren't laws that said that, but it was a fact. It was just what was done. Blacks were not allowed in these neighborhoods, that other neighborhoods. For example, housing. In the 50s, the government started giving large loans to people to get homes. It's supposed to be for everybody, but they wouldn't give it to black people. And even the contractors they would give money to build big neighborhoods and suburbs, the government would have them sign contracts that they would not then sell their homes to black people. So a lot of the wealth that many whites have today came from home ownership in the 50s and 60s at a time that black people could not even get those homes, which is part of why there's a gap between the wealth of whites and blacks today. One of the highlights of Martin Luther King's protests was the I Have a Dream speech that he gave at the March on Washington in 1963, right? That's where the famous I Have a Dream speech was made. Some of the victories he had was the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which outlawed any kind of laws that separated black or white or said blacks couldn't go here, whatever, right? And the 1965 Voting Rights Act, which made it illegal for states to stop black people from voting because they had been doing that for 100 years. And it put these protections to stop the different tricks that states would do to try to stop black people from voting. Martin Luther King was the most well known of many civil rights leaders, by far the best known, the most out front. He had to face, of course, racist attacks from whites who did not support the movement. By the way, there were many whites who did support the movement and were heroic as well. But the mass majority of, as a matter of fact, a poll about a year before he died, Dr. King was listed as the most hated man in America. So he sacrificed a lot for the fight for equality. He was murdered in 1968, April 4th. And ever since then, he's been remembered as the most forefront, cutting edge person of the civil rights movement. He was by far not the only one, but definitely the most widely known. And the laws and practices he helped to get in place now not only are designed to help black people, they are designed to stop any kind of prejudice against women, any other minorities, people with physical disabilities. So people from all walks of life can be grateful for the impact that Dr. King had in his lifetime. So that's just a super short version of some things about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I encourage you to look up words like Jim Crow, segregation, Bull Connor, one of the worst attackers of Dr. King, just so you can know the world that Dr. King was fighting against. It's hard to know the value of what he did if you don't know what he was fighting against. All right. This is Larry Temple, just a little bit about the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Happy MLK Day.